Good evening, everybody, and thanks for coming out tonight to the Roosevelt 2.0. This is a great meeting spot. I want to tell you a little bit about Move to Amend before we get started. Move to Amend is a nationwide coalition of individuals and organizations that are petitioning for the end of the Supreme Court ruling of Citizens United. That ruling allowed for corporations to be people and money to be considered free speech. So far, 4,000 organizations and over 265,000 individuals have signed on. David Cobb will be giving us, it's partly a history lesson and partly a call to action. And you will definitely be called to action after you hear him speak. We have some speakers first. Jennifer Sullivan will be the first one. She's a lifelong activist, currently co-chair of the Florida Green Party. She became involved in Move to Amend early on, and she has a story to tell about corporatism. Jennifer?
Welcome to all. I'd like to begin with a piece by satirical writer Andy Borowitz. I'll preface this with hopes that those who review the Second Amendment, or revere the Second Amendment, I should say, will understand the humor. And then I will make a disclosure that my most revered amendment is the First Amendment. Of course, later, David Cobb will make a strong case for adding a new amendment. Head of the NRA defends the right to buy politicians, Washington. In a testimony before Senate Judiciary Committee today, National Rifle Association CEO Wayne LaPierre warned that the NRA would vigorously oppose any legislation that limits the purchase, the sale, and purchase or ownership of politicians. Politicians pose no danger to the public if used correctly, said LaPierre, who claims to have over 200 politicians in his personal collection. Everyone hears about the bad guys in Congress. Well, the only thing that stops a bad guy with a vote is a good guy with a vote. I'm proud to be an owner of many of those votes. LaPierre's comments drew a sharp rebuke from Carol Foiler, a politician control advocate who spent the past 12 years lobbying for stricter limits on the sale of politicians. Right now, a man like Wayne LaPierre can walk right into Congress and buy any politician he wants. She said, there's no background check, no waiting period. And so hundreds of politicians are falling into the hands of people who are unstable and, quite frankly, dangerous. In addition to limiting the sale of politicians, Foiler said, it's time for society to take a look at the sheer number of politicians in the United States. There's no doubt we would be safer if there were a few of them. I want to make a quick plea about our so-called entitlements and other hard-fought-for rights. The speech pushed by moneyed interests has been quite twisted on these. People are entitled to Social Security upon retiring, as they had paid towards it in their working years. Medicare the same. Privatization has been glorified as the perfect solution, as if anything involving human beings can even be perfect. Privatization can be clarified as for-profit. Think, who pays for that extra profit when our pooled resources in the form of taxes have failed to present the perfect scenario? Monsanto has privatized seeds. Companies draw water from the Earth's aquifers and sell us water. Prisons and schools are being pushed into for-profit versus a push for better results. Libraries are on the chopping block as wasteful and something poor people who can't afford their own books or internet just exploit. We hear of the Postal Service CEO Donahue declaring a 5-day delivery when he knows this must be approved by Congress. The USPS is like libraries as a model of democracy. They both started by Benjamin Franklin, by the way. No matter how rich or poor or where you may live, you get free delivery, paid for by postage, not taxes. Small business can't compete with multinationals as far as TV, radio, billboard ads, or celebrity spokespersons. The small, middle-sized businesses are what drives our economy, and they can still send out ads or coupons in the mail. So, the next time you get something like this, read it and support small and medium business, or at least quietly recycle it and be glad that it's USA Jobs, a free enterprise at work. The red plum is distributed here in other states. That's local jobs, as Valpak, its printer, can be seen right off of 275 between Tampa and St. Pete. Rather than eliminating a day of delivery and damaging current infrastructure of the USPS, we should ask Congress to eliminate the 2006 forced retirement funding of 75 years in the future. No other public or private entity is forced to do that yet. Perhaps we should eliminate high-paying middle management jobs in the USA, or in the USPS. People who merely study statistics in favor of people who are actually moving the mail and transporting and sorting and delivering it. Finally, are there any union members here? Okay. All right, I just want to say that we are the 11%. In a right-to-work state, where money is used to being speech, it now has reached 24 states. Union membership is discouraged, villainized, and made difficult. Unions, again, composed of people actually doing the work, don't always represent the perfect solution. Remember, they're humans, but one thing is clear. If they hold the line on wages, eliminate unions, and fair wages overall can be expected to fall for all. Ironically, as we in the United States disband the gains that we have achieved in the 1930s, China is having their own 1930s experience. Last fact. Fact, 11% of the union members in the USA workforce is down to its lowest point in 76 years, down from a high of 24% in the 70s. If you graph it, it's clear to see that as unions fall, so do real wages in general. Let's nip this trend and move to amend. Thank you.
Our next speaker is John Russell, ARMP, a healthcare policy expert. He works at exposing corporatism at all levels, and he's run for Congress several times himself, so he knows all about money and politics. John?
Thank you very much, Anita. How many people here actually think we have a functioning democracy? We don't. We have a facade of democracy for those who are not paying attention. The president the other night, he always gives a good speech. But what was not said after the event was over by the pundit, except for one. One talked about the TPP, John Fugelsang on current TV. He was quickly dispatched. We need to go to another topic. The TPP has been described as NAFTA on steroids. So how does the president think we're going to create more jobs? Here in Florida, the Florida Democratic Party has just appointed, supposedly elected, but appointed an individual named Allison Tant, who in 1999-2000 worked for DBT and ChoicePoint as a lobbyist. Both of those companies were instrumental in removing 57,000 African Americans from the voter rolls. Her husband, interestingly, was a lawyer for Bush in Bush v. Gore. This is who runs the Democratic Party. So can anyone here imagine that we actually have an opposition party to the dominant Republican party in this state? I'd like to know what drugs you're smoking if you still think, after hearing that we do. It is more than that. What does money do? Money put Allison Tant in her position as a lobbyist to work against the people. The corporations work against the people. And when we think about it for a minute, everything is moving right of center. The left has vectored to the right over the past 20 years. And it doesn't matter who's the president. And it doesn't matter who you are when you're running for office, as long as you play ball. The people that are described in the newspapers and the mass media, the corporate media, as people that the ordinary citizen should support, these people are the people that raise the money. Our entire political system revolves entirely around how much money you raise. How do you raise the money? You raise the money by playing ball. So anyone who does not play ball is derided, discredited, and criticized. I know, because I've been one of those candidates. I'm not a real politician in the eyes of the corporatist media. And so it doesn't matter how well thought out your policies are, or who you are, or the reasons why you're running for office. It is purely about maintaining the status quo. It is the status quo and the establishment that we are here talking about trying to rein in today. That's what David's going to talk about. He's going to give you constitutional details and laws and so on, because I've been with David for several years now on these events. And he's going to give you the kind of details that should make you shudder in your shoes as to why we need to stand up. But how well are we going to be able to accomplish this when the people who benefit from the system currently in place are precisely the people that we need to take action on behalf of this effort? It's going to be a very difficult road to hoe, but what we can do is continue to educate people so we can get an even greater popular effort to stand for the idea that money should not be the sole determiner of who is elected to office and to represent us, because in truth, no one represents us. And that's what we're here talking about, is people not being represented by the people who they supposedly elect. I'm looking forward to hearing what David has to say today, because there's been a lot of new developments as we've gone along, and 5 minutes does not do justice to what the problems are. And we'll look forward to David here, and I thank you for listening. Look forward to seeing the people in St. Pete tomorrow.
Mark Adams practiced law in Florida and has won the first injunctions getting a third-party candidate into the debates. Mark's handled more congressional election contests than any other attorney in history. He represented John Russell, Clint Curtis, and others in contesting the official results of the 2006 elections in Florida State Court and before the U.S. House of Representatives, and his efforts resulted in proof showing that several Florida elections have been rigged. Mark founded the enterprise Project Vote Count to expose the facts that computers count our votes in secret, and that's for real, and that secret vote counting is unconstitutional. Mark?
Thanks, Anita. Like John said a minute ago, it's a facade of democracy. Facades maintained by the government, by the mass media, and for the most part by the alternative media and many of the so-called reform groups. Fortunately, there are a few groups that are trying to restore democracy, a rule of, by, and for the people. And that's why I'm here tonight. Move to Men is one of those groups. Of course, even if we eliminated all the corporate money in politics tomorrow, the votes would still be counted in secret. You know, there's a famous ruler who said, "Those who cast the votes decide nothing. Those who count the votes decide everything." His name was Joseph Stalin, and he murdered more of his own citizens than any other ruler in history, with the exception of Mao Zedong. So, do we really want to have our votes counted in secret? Do we want to keep that secret a secret? I don't think so. Not if we want a democratically elected government. But elections are only one part of democracy. Democracy is ruled by the people. That's why Abraham Lincoln described our government as one of, by, and for the people, because he understood how our government was designed to function. It was designed to allow the people to rule. The people ended alcohol prohibition because they would no longer convict anyone when they were charged with selling or manufacturing alcohol. After that, it was repealed because the government looked really bad in the eyes of the people. Everybody knew alcohol prohibition was really no more than a charade that enriched the rulers and gave them power to use a law with no victims to keep people under control. Of course, it wasn't long after that that they passed marijuana prohibition. It was repealed by the U.S. Supreme Court in the late 60s, and then they passed it again using the commerce power. The commerce power is the clause in the Constitution where the framers decided they wanted to give the federal government the power to rule the world. I'm serious now. They really didn't want that, but that's how it's interpreted now. How it's interpreted now is the Commerce Power gives the federal government the power to rule the world. Okay? But anyway, back to what's going on with democracy in America. Actually, in America, there are 7 states, at least 7 states, because I haven't read all 50 constitutions. I quit about halfway through. 7 states either prohibit counting votes in secret or require the votes to be counted in public right in their constitutions. Got a flyer at the door, you can look it up, you can actually go to the state constitutions yourself, see it with your own eyes. So you don't have to just believe me. But the constitutions of Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Maine, and Louisiana require the votes to be counted in public, and the constitutions of Virginia and South Carolina prohibit counting votes in secret. Okay, there's also three U.S. Supreme Court cases that say that the right to vote not only includes the right to cast the ballot, but the right to make sure your ballot's counted accurately. And right now, your ballot is counted on a computer. It's made and programmed by one of 4 corporations, and the government officials just take their word for what the total is. They do not go back on election day and count those paper ballots to compare it with the total with the computer. Now, some of you are probably going, well, you know, computers count right. Exactly, but when you go get money from an ATM, do you keep a receipt? Because a lot of people do, because we understand computers make mistakes. Computers can be hacked. Totals can be manipulated. We proved that in 2006. We proved at least 14% of the votes cast for John were stolen from John. At least 14% of the votes cast for Clint Curtis were stolen from Clint Curtis. That was done because the votes are counted in secret, and no one in government questions the corporate total that's spit out of the machine. So that's something to think about. Obviously, Move to Amend needs to expand if it wants to be the leader in restoring democracy in the country, because it's not only the money, but it's also the method of elections that we need to focus on. Thank you very much.
I wanted to say thank you to for the Roosevelt for hosting this, and I wanted to remind people to get some refreshments, get something to drink. They're back there waiting for you, and place your order. And I wanted to introduce David Cobb, a lifelong activist, attorney, Green Party presidential candidate in 2004, and a revolutionary.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Lydia. Thanks, Cobb. I like that introduction. You know what? It's true. I am a lawyer. I've sued corporate polluters. I've lobbied elected officials. I've run for office myself. I ran for Attorney General in Texas, where I pledged to use that office to revoke the charters of corporations that routinely violate health, safety, environmental protection laws. I ran for President of the United States in 2004. And of course, we know that George Bush stole not 1 but 2 elections, and in large part because there was a green on the ballot in Ohio that actually demanded a recount. We didn't actually get a recount in Ohio, but what we did do is prove that these black box voting machines that Mark talked about or cannot simply be trusted. But you know what probably I'm most proud of as a engaged citizen? I've been to jail for justice. I'm most proud of the fact that I've been arrested for nonviolent civil disobedience. Yeah, right on. In fact, when I ran for president, I said, I'm running on my arrest record. Right? And I'm going to be clear about something. I fully expect to be in jail again before we win. And I'm not joking. And I'm not joking about either of those points that are implicit in what I just said. I am willing to go to jail for justice. I suspect that I and others will have to. And I'm also serious that we're going to win. Because I'm not doing this to just make myself feel good. I already feel good. And I'm doing this to make myself a good person. I'm already a good person. The work that I'm doing now with Move to Amend is being done by me and others because we genuinely believe and understand that we are in the early stages of a nonviolent revolution in this country that will actually put we the people in charge. Right? And let's be clear, for the first time in our history. It's not as if there's some golden age of democracy that we get to go back to, or that we're reclaiming democracy, because it's time for us to actually come to terms with a historical understanding of where this country has come from, where we are now, so that we can actually see where we're going to go. And now, my friends, I'm going to tell you that I think that in order to do that successfully, we've got to learn how to be very persuasive. I have to persuade you, and you have to learn to be persuasive when you go to other people. And so, I want to share something that I knew intuitively as a trial lawyer, and now scientists are proving beyond a shadow of a doubt, and that's this. If you want to be persuasive, facts don't really matter so much. Man, y'all, the first time I heard that, I thought, this is terrible. Right? Like many of you, I bet I had invested a lot of time in learning facts, and you sort of hope and think that if you can just present facts cogently and logically, that everybody will see what we see, and then a change will just sort of happen. Then I came into contact with the work and got to know a fellow named George Lakoff. See, some of you know that name. So George Lakoff is a cognitive scientist, and he's proven that because of the structure of how the human brain works, we don't make sense of the world through facts. Our brain is not like some supercomputer just running algorithms. He says we make sense of the world through the stories we tell each other. And stories that are told over and over again become the cultural narrative or the cultural frame, right? And so since I want to be persuasive, and because I know that human beings understand the world through stories, I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to tell a story on how it came to be that large transnational corporations are not just exercising power. I'm going to tell a story on how it came to be that these large transnational corporations are ruling us. As surely as masters once ruled slaves, as surely as kings once ruled subjects, unelected and unaccountable corporate CEOs are ruling in this country. They're deciding how much poisons will be in the air that we're all breathing or the water that we're all drinking. Corporate CEOs already decided what our transportation choices were going to be tonight. Corporate CEOs are deciding what kind of health care you'll get, or more accurately, what health care you won't get. Corporate CEOs decided whether to take this country into war. And we, the people, we get to choose between paper or plastic at the grocery store. We get to choose between Coke or Pepsi. See, you can have a myriad of consumer choices, provided you have the money to pay, which is kind of important. But no matter how many consumer choices we have, do not mistake a consumer choice with political power. Because real political power would be the ability to participate in a meaningful way in the decisions that affect our lives. And since I'm going to be telling a story, I want to be really clear and transparent. And ask you, as I tell this story, ask, is this a story that only political progressives could hear or understand? Or is David and the Move to Amend Coalition finding a way to tell a story within the American cultural narrative, the creation myth, of what we were taught about how this country operates? As I tell this story, and I want to make sure, John, how we doing? Because
Good shape.
Yeah, and over here, good shape. As we tell this story, because I'm glad to see this great crowd, but just know thousands others are going to see it because of the work of our folks who are not just hating the corporate media, but are becoming the media. So thank you. Yeah, a round of applause for our media activists. As I tell this story, my friends, I will cover 4 topics. And remember, is this a story only for progressives, or does this actually transcend both political parties, ideologies? Does this actually go deeper? Because let me tell you something. The notion of liberty, justice, and equality, what we were taught as American exceptionalism, is not true. Yes, we American children want and deserve liberty, justice, and equality. But you know what? So do Iraqi children, and Afghan children, and Israeli children, and Palestinian children, and Mexican children. See, the point is, yeah, you can applaud that. We got to understand that we're human beings, and as human beings, that this is actually our birthright, and it's not just because of the nation state of the United States of America. We're going to have to actually get over that, right? That is actually, I would suggest to you, that kind of hyper-nationalism is actually a very juvenile way of thinking about politics and actually separates us as human beings unnecessarily. But the thing I'm going to do now, as I tell this story, we're going to cover 4 topics together. The first topic, it's already been tossed around a lot tonight, and it gets tossed around all over the place in this country, is the word democracy. So to make sure we've got some common ground and some common understanding, let me ask, from what language is the word democracy derived? Greek. It's Greek. Let's break it down. Demos means the people. Kratia, K-R-A-T-I-A, it means rule or govern. So literally, the word democracy means the people rule. So a quick pop quiz. How many of y'all believe we, the people, are ruling in the United States? Don't be shy. Look around. Not a single hand in the air. I do this presentation all across the country. Last year, I did it over 100 times. This year, in 2013, I'm scheduled over 150 times. I ask this question everywhere I go. Almost nobody raises their hands. That's a problem. But saying it another way, I think it's a good thing. What? No. It's not a good thing that we the people don't rule. I think it's a good thing that people aren't raising their hands to that question anymore. I think it's a good thing that we're being honest enough, and may I say, courageous enough to confront a stark reality. A reality that is frightening for many of us when we first start to consider it, and that is that we do not have a functioning democracy in the United States of America. We, the people, don't rule. In fact, there is a small, wealthy elite. So in Greek, that word is plutocracy, the rule by a small, wealthy elite. And thanks to Occupy, we've got a fraction or a percentage that we can now use, right? We're ruled by what? 1%. The 1%, right? Or, depending on how you're slicing it, the 0.0000375%. But that's a less interesting chant. So I suggest that even though it might be accurate to even make it smaller, but I just can't see, we are the 99.98735%. So I'm going to keep it at 99%, but know that that's generous. And that brings me to the next topic, my friends, which is the word sovereignty. Folks, if I just had the word the sovereign on the board, who or what would you think of? Quick, the sovereign. King. I bet almost everybody here thought king, right? That's because sovereignty means the authority to rule. And 500 years ago, the king was the sovereign. The sovereign was the king. Those words were literally synonymous. And where, by the way, did the king claim his authority to rule? God. You don't get more legitimate. I mean, that's a big deal. To really illustrate that, we're going to do a quick little exercise. This exercise is always a lot of fun for me. You'll see, I will invite this assembled group at the Roosevelt 2.0 to close your eyes and repeat after me. David Cobb is the king. I told y'all this was fun for me. Oh, I got a couple of you, so I'll try another one. Because David is God's representative on earth. How about this last one? And therefore, anything David says, I will obey without question. Okay. Normally, this is the place where I would say, open your eyes. But to your credit, Tampa, nobody's eyes are closed. Good on you! But the second thing I'll observe is y'all did what everybody does. As soon as you realized what I was asking you to do, you all laughed at me. Did you notice that? I mean, some of you chuckled, some of you snickered. I got a couple of hell no's. I heard that, right? But the point is, everybody kind of laughed. And you know why you laugh? Because it's funny. And not funny as in, oh, David has just made a very witty and droll comment. No, it wasn't that sophisticated. I mean, you ask any comedian, and she or he would tell you, look, yeah, he used sophisticated humor. Or absurd humor. See, I set you up. And then I asked you to say something so absurd that your only appropriate response is to laugh. The fact that I can tell this fella right here how to live your life because who my daddy is? I mean, like he's even laughing about it right now, right? That's funny. Even better, that I get to say how all of society is going to be organized because of the divine right of kings? That's ridiculous. That's absurd. That's hilarious. Of course you laughed at that. And check it out. 500 years ago, people just like you and you and you, we not only said it, but we believed it. My friends, I'm asking you to take a moment and recognize that the question of sovereignty, not just who has the authority to rule, but what are the mechanisms for that? What are the cultural underpinnings of how we make decisions collectively? That might be one of the most important things that any group of human beings answer for themselves. And so when people tell me, oh, you can't amend the Constitution, that's too hard. We'll never do that. I think, have you not been paying attention? Throughout all of world history, throughout all of U.S. history, profound changes have been made. I'm not just talking about the change of a law or the change of one politician for another. I'm talking about changes in power dynamics. I'm talking about deep cultural shifts have been made. And all it takes is enough people to believe that that change can happen and begin to work for it. And here, now the Texan gonna get metaphysical on y'all. Y'all ready? You ready? Here it comes. We are all individually participating right now in creating our shared collective reality. Another more simple way to say it is, if enough people think that something is true, if enough people act like it's true, then it's true. And so, my friends, if it is true that the natural world is being destroyed, and that is true, and if it is true that a racist, sexist, and class-oppressive world order is being created with the plunder of Mother Earth, and that is true, then I suggest we need to start thinking and acting differently. Maybe we ought to start thinking and acting like we're in a crisis. You know why I think we ought to start thinking and acting like we're in a crisis? Because we're in a crisis, y'all! This is a crisis. Right now it's happening. It's an ecological crisis worldwide. It's an economic crisis worldwide. It's a social justice crisis worldwide. But I don't want you to get freaked out about that. But the reality is that there are a series of interlocking, connected crises that are coming down. The urgency of this moment cannot be overemphasized. We are in a series of crises, but don't get too freaked out, because I want to remind you that in the Chinese language, where they use symbols for words, the symbol for crisis is also the symbol for another word: opportunity. I submit to you that as scary as this moment is, and anybody who's paying attention has got to acknowledge, this looks frightening. It's a crisis. But it's also providing us an opportunity to transform how our social, political, economic institutions operate. We actually have it within our power to recreate the world. And we do not need and should not create an exploitive, oppressive world. We can't have it. It won't work. And that brings me, interestingly enough, to the next topic, which is the concept of legal personhood. Please note I did not write corporate personhood on the board. That's because I want us to focus. Legal personhood means the ability to assert rights. And since I'm talking about legal personhood, can you see I mean the ability to assert rights under law? And saying it this way, I hope you see immediately, legal personhood is not a legal technicality. The question of who gets to assert rights in any society is important. And let's just be really explicit. The ability to assert rights in the United States of America has been at the core of every social movement in this country. From the abolition of slavery, to women's suffrage, to the trade union movement, to the civil rights movement, the ability to assert rights and to claim the legal system has been at its core. It matters. And the last word on the board is the word corporation. Since that word is equally important, I will ask this question. From what language does the word corporation derive? It's from Latin. Let's break it down. Corpus means body. And now the suffix tion means to have or create. So literally, if you translate corporation from Latin, It means to have or create body. And by body, I mean physical body. That's because we are taught in law school. And by the way, are there any lawyers in the crowd besides me that would admit it? It's a friendly crowd, yeah? So do you remember in law school being taught this, that a corporation is a legal fiction? Of course, right? Every lawyer knows that. In fact, watch this. Even if you weren't subjected to the law school experience, if you have heard this idea